now Bobby accidentally dropped out
Yeah.
of the StreamYard, so we're bringing him back in.
We're going to get him.
Bobby Gerould, you know him for, his family, of course, his dad, Gary. They are Sactown royalty, if you will. Shout out to that blog. And you can also find all his work at Hoop Obsession. Let me help that. OBSE. This is one of those words where it's like, OBSESSION, hoopobsession.com, which is fitting.
That's why you're a good speller.
Thank you very much. Also written in front of me, because Bob is obsessed with hoops. We know that. So it's always nice to bring him on to add a little IQ to the show. Good morning. It's Dave and Jason. Bobby, how are you?
I'm well. How about you guys?
We're great.
We're nervously excited and apprehensive and anxious and all those things to see how the next direction of the Sacramento Kings, which direction it'll take tonight, Bob.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm right there with you as a Kings fan, wondering what's going to happen. What was the Julius Randle and what?
Yeah, so
back for me.
Yeah, Harrison Barnes, Kevin Huerter, and the 13 for Julius Randle, and yes, it works in the trade machine.
I'd give that a lot of thought. I think for me, it would depend on who's available still at 13. Sure. I kind of want to cheat and see. If Ron Holland is still there, he's someone I really like. He's 6'6.5", but that's in bare feet. So we'll give him 6'7", 6'11" wingspan, basically. I think it's 6'10.5". And he's a guy that, if his jump shot comes along, how many times have we heard that? But, if his jump shot comes along, he's potentially great in the NBA and someone who could be a future cornerstone of this team. So I evaluate Holland a little bit differently than some of the other people. I know obviously that there's some talk that he could slip all the way to 13. That tells you kind of what other people are thinking about him. He's number one on my board for this draft. And again, he probably wouldn't be number one on my board for some other drafts, but in this draft, he is number one on my board. That's something that, it hasn't been easy this year to rank the top 7 or 8 players, in my opinion. I think you really got to get dialed in there. And that's where I've arrived at. I had a moment of clarity sometime a couple days ago, and I said, Ron Holland is my guy.
Wow. And we've done this long enough, Bob, and for people that have listened to you over the years know that that's how you kind of don't really do a mock draft. It's like your rankings, I guess. Mm-hmm. So he literally is, if the Kings had one, you would take him number one.
Yes, I would. And, again, people are talking about, Ricochet or Donovan Clingan. Ricochet, I see the shooting ability, and I think he's going to be a good defender, but he doesn't have a lot of self-creation to his game. I think he's a guy that needs to be set up. I don't think Ricochet is a great athlete. Donovan Clingan was number one on my board for a long time, but in the last few days, I've just, really zoned in on him. And I really have some concerns about, he's had some foot strains. He is a huge man with a big frame. And, that's 20 years old. And we all know, think of yourselves, all of us collectively when we were 20 versus when you're 25 or 26 and you get your man weight on. This is as athletic as Donovan Clingan's ever going to be in his life is probably right now, just based on his archetype and his frame. And so I'd be really concerned about what he looks like in about 5 years. He already had the slowest 3/4 court sprint time at the NBA draft combine. He had the slowest lane agility times. And that's supposed to be, hit the strength of his game. It is a strength of his game. But I think in the NBA, when it gets sped up a little bit, there's more space. I just couldn't pull the trigger on him as like the number one guy. When you watch Ron Holland, man, he does some things athletically that others can only dream about. And I think there's a separation. That's, for me, what separates him. And then his shot's not ugly. It's not ugly at all. It could actually work, I think, with some repetition. If he just gets a little bit better, he could be special.
We talked earlier about Ron Holland, and I said the Kings coverage community would be over the moon. And Bob, this was before I knew this was your guy. Mm-hmm. Would be over the moon at Holland. He is getting rave reviews anywhere. So let me ask you this. The Kings are picking at number 13. They've had success at number 13 before, or in that vicinity. How, if the Kings were able to get Ron Holland today, if he were to slip that far, how would you compare that, obviously day one, on your list of all-time steals in comparison to when Tyrese Halliburton slipped that far?
Yeah, I think it'd be very comparable. Tyrese was number 2 on my board back in that draft. So I was sitting there for a long time saying, Tyrese has got to go next. Tyrese. And then it came to the Kings time, and I was like, yeah, who? Let's go. And they made the pick, and I, did a little dance. So, yeah, man, I think that would be big time, and again, there's no promise on any of these kids, but just looking at, and I've heard some people say that the numbers weren't that great in the G League. I mean, the dude averaged 20 points a game, basically just a shade under at like 19 points a game. He was playing with the NBA 3-point line. I think he's a defender. He's gonna come in and defend from day one in the NBA. I don't think there's any questions about him athletically or defensively. It all comes down to the shot, and the shot to me doesn't look broken. When you watch his makes, they look comfortable. And so that's where I'm at.
Talk with Bob Gerould here. Again, the site hoopobsession.com. I'm looking at your, I guess would be your final rankings, and we talked about.
Let's not jump the gun there, Jason. It's not 4 or 5 o'clock yet. So.
Oh wow, the numbers could be even on this list. Of the years you've done it, and you've told us, we've got your greatest hits, you've got misses, and it's no different than any GM. Sure. But Bob, to me, looking at yours compared to what other mock drafts are out there, I feel like this year, and I could be wrong, do you feel like you have a bigger disparity this year than maybe other years? Because, I mean, one, Holland is higher on your list than others. I see a guy like Zack Edey, who is at one time 20 on some people's list. He's moving up. You have him as high as 7 right now. Like I see more disparity on yours than maybe I've seen in other years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a pretty independent thinker. But I would just say that I don't come to any of these conclusions without some serious obsession about it. I do this, from back in when the college season starts. I'm watching college games, and I'm starting to write reports in April about some of these guys. And yeah, I mean, I spread myself thin because I'm trying to grade, so many guys. I really want to have a grade on like the top 100 guys, because history shows there'll be 58 guys drafted tonight, but actually there'll be about 100 new players when it's all said and done. In 5 years, there'll be about 100 players from this year that will have played at least a minute in the NBA. That's about how the averages work out. So, I don't know that it's too much different. There's always some guys that are younger players that I just can't get there with, and a couple of them for me. One of them is a guy who's mocked to the Kings quite a bit, is Jacoby Walter out of Baylor. And I can't get there with Jacoby Walter. He didn't show me much shot creation. He was a minus defender, despite having a 6'10" wingspan. And Baylor really wasn't that great of a team this year. He can shoot, and I think the athletic profile can be tantalizing, but he's a guy who's a lot further away from helping a team. Wow. And so I definitely wouldn't want Jacoby Walter on the Sacramento Kings. And then there's a couple other guys later in the draft. A guy, Keyshawn George from Miami, is another one that I can't get there with. And in the past, I've had one of the things that, if I brag on myself a little bit, one of the things I've done fairly decent is identify the ones that shouldn't be up there. Isaac Okoro had fans that thought he was going to be the next great, super defender. And look at his athletic profile. He's like a big muscle, and he's just going to score and do all this. And I couldn't get there with Isaac Okoro a few years ago. And I think it's turned out that was correct. So, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Like I always say, and we won't know tomorrow. Right. People will want to give out those first round draft grades tomorrow, but we won't really know.
You mentioned this was kind of an obsession for you. It's not hoopcuriosity.com. It's hoopobsession.com. Right. Bob Gerould joins us. All right.
I have issues. Yeah.
Brother, we all do.
Good issues.
I'm with you. They're all good issues. Let me ask you 2 quick Ron Holland questions, and then we can move on. Number one, 18, just under 19 years old, doesn't fit the Monty McNair status quo necessarily. Some would argue doesn't necessarily fit the timeline for the Kings. So what would the counter be there? And then secondly, the knock on Holland, if you will, was that he had an underwhelming G League year this year. So how would you respond to that as well, being so high on him?
Yeah, I don't buy that he had an underwhelming G League. He averaged 19.4 points, 6.6 rebounds, 2.2 steals, 2.9 assists. The only thing he did that wasn't great was shoot the three. He shot 24% from 3-point range, and yeah, that stinks. It's way under. But the defensive rating was 6.5 points better than the Ignite's team defensive rating. And when Holland went out with an injury, defensively, I mean, they weren't a good team to begin with, and they went to being a laughable team defensively after he went out. I mean, he's 6'11". He has great speed in the open court, 38-inch max vert. By all accounts, he's a great kid that works hard. We both know some people that worked quite a bit with him over there in the G League, and I just think that's the guy. Now, as far as the timeline is concerned, I'm not of the opinion that the Kings have to do something. I think they can get better by being smarter. They left about 600 minutes on the table last year with Malik Monk jacking around with his minutes, and he should have played a lot more. I don't know if he's going to be a starter now that he's back, if that was part of the deal or not. But if he is a starter, I think that goes a long way towards helping the Kings get a few more wins. You already won 46 games. To me, it's very simple. They need to be better and more efficient at the position Harrison Barnes plays. They need to be better and more efficient at the backup point guard position. So if you can address those two things and still give yourself some room to grow. I mean, I want the Kings. I'm a Kings fan. I want the Kings to be good in the year 2028. I want them to get better, but who's to say if you won 46 games already last year, you tinker a little bit, you play Monk a lot more, you maybe make a key free agent signing, whoever that is, maybe make a run. As I've mentioned before, I think Obi Toppin would be the kind of guy who would fit perfectly and seamlessly as your starting four on this team. Other people don't see him that way. I do. I think he's been stuck behind Julius Randle, who he rightfully should have been playing behind. He was stuck behind Pascal Siakam, who he rightfully should have been playing behind. But that's not to say that if you made him a number one, that he couldn't give you low-tier starter value. Now, he's a restricted free agent with the Pacers, but he's someone that I would definitely take a shot at. One more quick thought of, regarding trades. I've heard Kyle Kuzma's name a lot. Mm-hmm. I'm not wild about Kyle Kuzma. From this standpoint, I would say this. If you replace Kyle Kuzma's efficiency with Harrison Barnes, that's an upgrade offensively and an upgrade defensively. I don't think there's any question about it. But here's my concern. 33% three-point shooter, basically for his career. That's what he shot last year, which isn't great. That's, 36 is probably the league average for three-point shooting. So he's not a great three-point shooter. He's a high-volume guy that needs shots. So now we're talking Fox, Sabonis, if Monk's in the starting lineup. These are all, to me, that's your pecking order. And now if you threw Kuzma in there, I just don't think it's a great fit. Is De'Aaron looking at Kuzma sideways for, his shot volume? Is Monk getting enough shots? And then, like I said, Kuzma's not a great three-point shooter. So those things concern me. I kind of like that idea of whoever replaces Harrison's minutes being someone who's a lot more of a blender, someone who maybe you don't have to run a lot of plays for, which is what I've been, it's really what I've wanted all along, was someone instead of Harrison who can get to those loose balls that he doesn't get the rebounds that he doesn't get, make some timely cuts, get some dunks here and there. And then, a guy like Obi Toppin's a 40% three-point shooter. So, that's the direction that I could see the Kings going. You get Monk in the starting lineup, add a key free agent, and draft someone, and we can continue to grow this thing. And who's to say you couldn't win 50 to 52 games just by being more efficient with what you do, by I thought the Kings played with a hand tied behind their back way too many times last year by wasting minutes on Monk, jacking around with Chris Duarte at different times. I think there was one game last year where Chris Duarte came in and affected a win. And I remember complimenting Mike Brown. Yep, there it was. I don't just want to win on my terms. I'll take a win, Yeah. So again, I've longtime Kings fan going all the way back to when they first started here, and trades are tricky. You can have good chemistry and you bring in the wrong guy, and the next thing you know, the locker room is askew.
Yeah. Bob, another name, I think, based on what you just said about, trying to find those Harrison Barnes minutes or more efficient minutes there, backup point guard efficiency there. Zack Edey doesn't hit those, but you don't have to draft to hit those exact needs. Kind of a two-part thing on Edey. You have him on your list today at the moment at 7. If the Kings were to take him, again, intriguing name, how would he fit here? What do you think he will be as a pro? Could he play with Sabonis? Would they play him separately? How do you think that would go if they take Edey?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, Jason. Obviously, I think there'd be some concerns, the same concerns that you might have about Donovan Clingan, which I mentioned earlier about, playing in space and, what he might look like defensively. But I'll say this, he looked like he did defensively, and Purdue did just fine. Now, I know college and the NBA are two different things, but Zack Edey, I watched him go from kind of being just a joke almost as a freshman. He was kind of roly-poly, not really in shape, and people were like, yeah, he's just a big dude. And then people started to take him a little more seriously, and he kept working on his body. He got better and better every year to the point where he could play 35, 36 minutes a game in the NCAA. Conditioning is not going to be a problem for this guy. He's tough. He's mentally strong. He can score with the right hand, the left hand. He draws gravity. I mean, the bigger the mass, the gravity, right? So he's down there in the post. You have to double or triple team him. And with a team like the Kings, who already does a good job of getting open 3-point looks, I think they'd get even more open 3-point looks. It would take some creativity for certain. I don't know that he'd come in right away and be like the starting center and you move Domas to the 4. But as I think I've talked with you guys before, I think it's something that the Kings may have to consider if they really do want to, make a run for a championship someday. I'm not sure you're going to ever do it with Domas as your 5-man. He's one of the very few bigs at 5 in the NBA who has a minus defensive rating compared to his team. And that's just not usually something, that gets you a championship. So not saying that Zack Edey is that piece, but I do think that there are a lot of people who look at him and still carry that kind of, oh, he's just a big, doofus kind of thing. And that's not the case at all. This guy is a real basketball player.
He was the only college player on the Canadian national team that took 3rd place over the United States and qualified for the 2024 Summer Olympics. The only player in college on that Canadian team, and he was selected by a guy named Jordi Fernandez, who was coaching that team. So it'd be an interesting phone call for them to make. I want to go back to the Kuzma comments real quick, because I don't disagree with everything you said on the whole. Honestly, you make great points. We know about the contract descending and some of the more attractive things. Though the one thing I wanted to ask you was about his efficiency and your worries about that. Would there perhaps be something to be said about how he was defended on the Wizards with their lack of options? You have Jordan Poole, who's incredibly inefficient, and a couple other guys, but really Kuzma was their leading scorer, their top option. If he comes over here, he's at best the 2nd, maybe even at times the 3rd option on the floor. Would that lessen your worry at all that perhaps he's not attracting doubles as much, or is that negligible to you?
Well, in his mind, he ain't going to be no 2nd or 3rd option.
Yeah, right.
He's one of those guys, right? He's going to get his FGAs. So
right.
as my man Eddie Johnson would say, he's going to give himself a chance. Right. And that's I just think that's part of his personality. But going back and looking over the years, you say, maybe it was a little of his inefficiency was a function of the Wizards, but he's really never been a great shooter. He's in the 30s, and I think there was a time where he was a complimentary piece, with the Lakers when he was doing his thing there, but it was pretty clear in the pecking order. But now he's a 28-year-old veteran. I think he thinks of himself as a star. He's a big personality. I'm not with all the extra stuff that he does, off the court. I've never really been personally a Kyle Kuzma fan. So take that all into consideration.
Sure.
But again, as I started it off by saying, if you were replacing Kyle Kuzma with Harrison Barnes, I think it's an upgrade on offense and on defense. So I could probably get in line with it. But I'm just saying that I have concerns from a chemistry standpoint. And Dave and Jason, if we go back all the way back to our first and second year, as I love to do on your show, I love to narrowcast and get it to, there's only a handful of people that know what the hell I'm talking about. But let's go back to that first year when the Sacramento Kings were here in 85, 86, and they made a trade right before the trading deadline around All-Star break for Terry Tyler. And he came in and he helped the Kings get into the playoffs. So they got waxed in the first round by the Houston Rockets. So the next year they're like, well, that's not good enough. We need to do better. So we're going to bring in Derek Smith. Mm-hmm. And Derek Smith and Reggie Theus got along about as well as, cats and dogs. It just wasn't a thing. And so I would have some of those concerns. Like I said, Kuzma is a big personality. So while I could see the benefits, I also could see that maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, and you might be able to still accomplish what you want to accomplish just by being smarter about the minutes you divvy out and some of the ways you go about your business. I mean, that's me.
Hey, Terry Tyler, first sports autograph I ever got on a visor at a golf tournament. Yes, sir.
He was such a cool dude.
He was
He came in when that year I was a senior in high school at Kennedy High School. We had a talent show, and what the heck, I needed people to come and judge the talent show. So I asked Terry Tyler, and sure enough, he came out. He had just moved to Sacramento, came out, judged our talent show. I was the MC, did a little interview with him, and asked him why the Kings were so terrible.
Thanks for coming, Terry.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. He laughed and laughed. And those were good times. Stuart Sato was also one of the.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. I was hitting all the big bases.
Jeez.
Yeah.
No Creighton Sanders, though. Huh?
We did not have. Okay. Creighton was probably pulled up somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
We do know.
We know exactly what it is.
It was an evening talent show, Dave.
Bob Gerould joining us. We are way out of time. So lightning round, quick question. What percentage in your mind do the Kings make a pick and trade the pick?
If Ron Holland's there, we pick him. If Zack ED's there, we pick him. If Devin Carter's there, we pick him. If Rob Dillingham's there, we pick him. If Khalil Ware's there, now we're starting to get into let's make a trade territory. And beyond that, I think that's it for me. No Jacoby Walter, no Tristan Da Silva. None of that kind of stuff. Not for me.
Hoopobsession.com is where you can find Bobby Gerould, all his expertise. Pull up, enjoy a cold one, and check Bobby's stuff out. It's a line of the day.
That is awesome.
It's funny because it's true.
It's true.
All right, Bob. Thanks so much. You have a great day. Enjoy the draft.
You guys as well. Happy draft day.
Thank you.
Take care.
That was good knowledge.